Chavez. For centuries, a popular anti-Semitic trope was that of the wandering Jew. Created in the Middle Ages, the canard was rooted in the Christian legend of a Jew who had taunted Jesus on his way to the crucifixion and was cursed to eternally wander the earth until Jesus' second coming. Of course, the trope of the wandering Jew was perpetuated by the de facto constant movements of Jews of Europe, exiled from their homeland, expulsed from Western Europe, and perpetually relocating due to pogroms and the whims of kings and popes. It's easy to see how the trope gained popularity. Integral to maintaining the myth of the wandering Jew was not only the physical movement of Jews, but also their attitude and their positions towards the surrounding Gentiles. Jews were considered weak, non-confrontational, and pusillanimous. Their response to conflict was a thief's response, underhanded and furtive, stealing away in the night to avoid direct confrontation. Perhaps the best biblical model for their behavior is our patriarch, Yaakov Avinu, whose dominant characteristic for much of his life was chicanery. While perhaps he's most famous for stealing Esav's bracha by deceiving his father, Yaakov frequently resorts to secretive and duplicitous tactics to get ahead. He exploits Esav's hunger to acquire the birthright. He amasses his wealth by literally pulling the wool over Lavan's eyes with some shifty physiological engineering of sheep mating patterns. Even in utero, Yaakov attempts to supplant Esav's natural advantage by grabbing onto his heel. His very name reflects his penchant for duplicity. The root word ayin kuf bet means to deceive, as when Esav decries that Vayakiveni zefamayim, Yaakov twice has deceived me. Rounding out Yaakov's thief-like personality is his tendency to flee in the face of confrontation. Immediately after stealing his brother's bracha, Yaakov runs to Haran to escape Esav's wrath. Incapable of likewise confronting Lavan directly, Yaakov flees with Lavan's daughters and grandchildren while Lavan was ostensibly away on a business trip, in what the Torah literally describes as Yaakov stealing Lavan's heart. It is perhaps no surprise, then, that Yaakov in our Parsha wishes to avoid at all costs any confrontation with Esav. Unwilling to go and meet him himself, Yaakov sends messengers to Esav in far-away Seir, expecting that will suffice, and is then shocked and terrified when he in fact is informed that Esav is coming to see him in person. Cornered, Yaakov prepares for his petrifying rendezvous by splitting his camp, providing an opportunity for escape for at least some of his family. He goes to sleep for the night, and just at that moment that we as readers who have been anxiously awaiting this fated meeting, fated since Parshat Toldot, we expect it to happen, the narrative at that moment is interrupted. Yaakov wishes to send more gifts to Esav to further placate him. We are told in 6 very long verses, which are dedicated to describing his gifts. We are told in detail the number of his camels, and the bulls, and the cows, and the specific way that these gifts should be presented, none of which appears to be in any way integral to the retelling of this story. The narrative, in effect, in its own recounting of the events, is itself delaying the meeting, symbolizing through the text the feeling of procrastination and retardation. Finally, after all of these gifts, Yaakov goes back to sleep. But once again, the narrative is interrupted, and the fated meeting is postponed, this time, it would seem, permanently. Yaakov, in the dead of night, picks up his family and dangerously crosses the Yabok River. As the Rashbam notes, Yaakov's flight echoes that of his future descendant, David HaMelech, who will one day fear for his life and likewise flee from a family member, in his case, his rebel son Avshalom, by crossing a river in the middle of the night. However, just as Yaakov is about to complete his escape, he is stopped by an unknown adversary who wrestles with him until sunrise. While Rashi, following the Midrash, suggests that it was his adversary, the angel, who wished to leave at sunrise to fulfill his angelic duties, I would suggest that it is in fact Yaakov who wishes to leave. Recognizing that with the rising of the sun, his opportunity for escape is quickly fading, Yaakov desperately begs his combatant to let him pass. He is, however, rebuffed and maimed, making an escape physically impossible. Yaakov is forced to resign himself to the reality that he must encounter Esav head-on, without any viable escape plans. For once, he will have to look Esav directly in the eye. It is at this critical moment that Yaakov fully matures as a character. He learns the value of directly confronting his problems, and, more importantly, he develops the self-assuredness to stand up to his enemies. Rechristened, he is no longer Yaakov the deceitful, but Israel, the one who has confronted the all-powerful. While Yaakov had previously prayed to God to save him from his terrifying brother, Hatzileni now, he now recognizes that what he really needed was a lesson in confronting his fears, and he thanks God for protecting his psyche, Vatinatzel nafshi. He has still not yet encountered Esav, he will very soon, but appreciates that God has responded to his prayers by providing him now not with what he had asked for, but what he had actually truly needed. He had asked to be rescued from Esav, but he appreciates that what he really needed was the self-confidence to confront Esav. And after Yaakov finally does meet with Esav, he leaves shalem, complete, tranquil, in peace in the knowledge that he has wrestled with his fears and he has overcome them. We each in our own lives can at times struggle with confronting our fears. Hopefully, they are never as life-threatening as the 400 deadly mercenaries Esav hired marching towards Yaakov. But our fears nonetheless can be very frightening. It can be tempting to respond to our fears as Yaakov did in his youth, avoiding all conflict and slipping away in the dead of night. Unfortunately, the situation we stand in now due to the pandemic only exacerbates our all too natural proclivity for avoidance by enabling irresponsible behavior. Because of social distancing, we can avoid confronting any unpleasant social interactions, and we can ignore important responsibilities. Digital interactions allow us to mute and turn off our cameras in uncomfortable situations, and without the need for direct, unmitigated, face-to-face interactions, forcing us to look people in the eye, it can be all too easy for us to ghost our problems. The story of Yaakov, then, can serve us as a guide and a reminder of the importance of confronting our fears. Through the hard work of wrestling with our issues, we too can grow as Yaakov once did, and live up to our namesake as the children of Israel. Ki sarita im Elokim v'im anashim vatuchal. For we have striven with God and with people, and we have prevailed.